Call this meeting to order for Planning and Zoning Commission meeting Monday, August the 5th, 2024, time 6:30. Roll call and certification of a quorum. We do have with Henry Fuentes absent at this time. And turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. For each item, we will have a call to order, followed by a... Nothing happened right there. I'll start over. For each item, we will have a call to order, followed by a staff report and an applicant presentation. The public comment window will be open to share support or opposition of the request. Please state your name and address for the record and keep your comments brief within 3-minute time frame. Afterwards, the commission and staff will discuss and the commission will take a vote. The vote will be to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or requesting to table to a future meeting date. City Council will review the 2 CUP requests on Monday, August 26th. And onto the consent agenda. We have 3 items tonight: approval of an excused absence, the minutes, and a preliminary plat. And tonight on new business, we have 1 plat that is being requested to be postponed, and 2 conditional use permit requests, 1 church expansion within the R1 district, and 1 auto repair shop within the GC district. Thank you, Chair. I'll turn it back to you to start with the consent agenda.
And Chair, just before you rock it in there, that plat was withdrawn. Postpone is the wrong word there, so
Okay.
It was withdrawn.
All right. That moves us to consent agenda. Can I have a motion and a second for approval?
Commissioner McDonald to approve.
Commissioner Kuhn, second.
All right. Having a first motion and a second, do we have any discussion? Seeing none, move it to vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 5-0. All right, that moves us into new business. First consideration has been withdrawn, so it moves us to our second item for the night. Consider impossible action, conditional use permit application, CUP 24-15. Public hearing, a request by Trung Don and Sheila Rowley, applicant on behalf of the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit for the expansion of a church use within the single-family residential R1 district on approximately 19.934 acres of land located at 1750 Riverstone Ranch Drive, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion and a second for approval, please?
Commissioner Hendricks, I recommend approval.
Commissioner Stocknick, second.
All right, and that takes us to purpose of the hearing, a staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Patrick Bauer to provide the staff report.
Thank you, Katja. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. As mentioned, the request before you tonight is for a conditional use permit for the expansion of an existing church use. The property is currently developed with an approximately 10,000 square foot church building, and now they're additionally proposing to do a 26,000 square foot multi-purpose building to serve the church and a 2,000 square foot maintenance/storage building for the church. They're also proposing additional parking to serve those proposed buildings. And the UDC requires that no conditionally permitted use shall be enlarged, extended, increased in intensity, or relocated unless an application is made for a new CUP. Thus, the expansion of the buildings requires the new CUP. To date, staff has not received any comments in favor or against the request. And kind of looking at the zoning of the property, it's kind of covered with a little yellow. You can see that existing building, which is on the property, which previously received a CUP, which we'll go over in the site history. But the zoning of the property, as mentioned, is that single-family residential 1 zoning. And then the properties to the northwest, southwest, and the southeast are both that single-family residential 1, with the residential areas to the northwest and southwest being the cluster plan or the Riverstone Ranch, Clear Creek subdivision. And then the properties to the the northeast is outside of the city's jurisdiction, and that's why you don't see any color or zoning over it. Looking at the future land use of the property as well as the surrounding residential subdivision and the school are the low-density residential designation. Here we get a look at another aerial view of the property with the property outlined in yellow. And as mentioned, it is surrounded by single-family residential subdivisions on 3 sides with a school across Riverstone Ranch Drive. So a little history on the property. It was originally annexed into the city in 2002. That original CUP for that 10,000 square foot building, which is existing, was approved in 2012. And the property was platted in 2013, and that building was constructed in that same year. And then most recently, specifically focused on this phase of development that they're focusing on right now, the ZBA approved a variance in their July 2024 meeting to defer the required landscape buffers to a future phase of development. And specifically, it's for those landscape buffers, which are to the single-family subdivisions that are within the city limits. So the northwest and the southwest property lines is where they're deferring the required landscape buffers to a future date, as will be shown on the site plan because of the development kind of being focused on the eastern portion of the lot, as what the ZBA approved. And so here's a view of the property from Riverstone Ranch Drive. You can see that existing building kind of off in the distance below the tree. That's the existing 10,000 square foot building. And here we get a look at the proposed site plan. This is not showing the full site. It's more showing the portion that's along Riverstone Ranch Drive, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. But in the middle and between these 2 arrows is where that existing building is, and then some existing parking, and then everything else kind of shaded in the darker coloring is where the proposed parking is going, as well as that 26,000 square foot multi-purpose building and the maintenance building, which is kind of behind it towards the back. But this is focused more along the eastern portion of the property. With that, one of the residential subdivisions is kind of the bottom of your screen. Here we get a look at the proposed landscape plan with the landscaping along Riverstone Ranch Drive being taken care of in the first phase. Most of the landscaping is focused in those new parking areas where parking trees are required. And here we get a look at some renderings of the proposed multi-purpose building. This is that 26,000 square foot building. And so staff reviewed the request based on some of the review criteria. And in terms of the future land use plan, while the proposed use may not be compatible with the low density residential designation, staff finds that the request is compatible with the comprehensive plan, as this is somewhat of an infill lot and the proposed use is a benefit to surrounding neighborhoods. Additionally, the request meets the thoroughfare plan, and any future development will be required to meet the any other requirements of the UDC as well. And the subject property also has access to utilities. So in terms of the approval criteria for a conditional use permit, staff found that the requests met all 7 of the criteria for approval of a CUP. And it's also, as mentioned, is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the thoroughfare plan. And thus staff recommends approval of the requested CUP. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present for presentation? Ma'am, go to the podium, state your name and address, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry. My name is Sheila Rowley. I'm with Studio Red Architects, and we are the applicants for, on behalf of St. Luke's Evangelist Catholic Church and the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston. We are the architects for their Phase 2 building on this property.
Okay, and your address is?
My address is 1320 McGowan Street in Houston, Texas, where Studio Red Architects is located.
Okay, thank you. And you're saying you didn't have a presentation? You just-
No, sir. We made a presentation at the Zoning Board of Adjustment hearing, and we did not prepare a separate one for this.
Okay, if we have any questions, then we'll call you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Okay. That leads it to people wishing to speak for or against this application. Seeing no movement, asking a second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, that opens it up to staff discussion. Anyone have anything?
Commissioner Hendricks, we already approved the 2013 use for this same exact use, so I don't see that this poses any kind of problem.
All right, y'all ready to call for a vote? All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 5-0. That moves us over to item number 3. Consideration and possible action, conditional use permit application CUP 24-18. Public hearing, a request by Sonley Motors LLC, applicant on behalf of Texas Lone Star Cut Stone, represented by Bruce Onray, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit CUP for an auto repair major use within the general commercial GC district on approximately 2.066 acres of land located at 5929 Bartlett Street, Suite 159, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion and a second for approval?
Commissioner Kuhn, I'll state that motion.
Commissioner McDonald, second.
Okay, that leads us to staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Patrick, the floor is yours.
You gotcha. So the CUP before you is for an auto repair facility within a 1,500 square foot lease space on the subject property on Bartlett Street. And the proposed services, as seen on the screen, kind of includes anything from a quick oil change to an engine / transmission repair. And the applicant stated that there is to be no collision repairs at the site, as well as no repairs completed outside of the building. To date, staff has not received any comments in favor or against the request as well. And so looking at the surrounding zonings around the property, we see there's some general commercial, so that same zoning to the west of the property, and then it's all neighborhood service to the north, south, and the west. Looking at the future land use designation of the property, we see that the subject property is the business commercial designation, as well as all the surrounding properties are that same designation. And this is the designation which kind of supports the general business and general commercial zoning districts. Just looking at an aerial view of the property, you can see the existing multi-tenant office warehouse on the subject property, with the subject property outlined in yellow. And the red outlined area represents where that specific lease space will be located on the property. And so some of the surrounding uses include, there is a single family residence, which is located along the Harkey Road on this side, which is to the northwest of the property. And there's 2 churches, which are to the west of the property and then to the north of the property. And there's some additional warehouse space to the west, or to the east, southeast of the property. So a little site history is it was originally annexed into the city in 1997. In 2013, City Council approved a zone change for the property to change it from the general business district to the general commercial district. And then in 2014, the property was platted, and the existing 12,470 square foot office warehouse was constructed in 2016. And so here we get a look of the lease space. Here you can kind of the left image would be like if we're standing right in front of that lease space. And then the right image is actually if you're standing within the cul-de-sac of Bartlett Street, you would kind of see landscaping and stuff kind of screening that actual lease space. This would be your view if you were standing at the roadway. And so here we get a look at the proposed site plan. You can see the bulb look right here is where that cul-de-sac starts, and then you enter into the property. And the lease space is kind of on that southern portion, with your northern portion being the right side of the property. So the lease space is shown here in yellow, and that's the 1,500 square foot lease space. And so looking at some of the auto repairs around the site, staff found that there are 7 within 1 mile, but it should be noted that this list includes anything from your minor auto repair to major auto repairs, and it includes kind of an extensive list. There's many different types of auto repairs you can have, from just your oil change to your transmission person to people doing collision repairs. So while the number may be large, it also includes a lot of different types, and they all kind of may do different things. And so looking at some of the review criteria for approval of a conditional use permit, staff found that the request is consistent with the future land use plan of that business commercial designation. Additionally, it's consistent with the thoroughfare plan. And with it being an existing site, if any alterations are made to the inside of the property or inside of the building or to the site, it will be required to meet any Unified Development Code requirements. And the subject property does have access to city utilities currently. And so in terms of the approval criteria for a conditional use permit, staff found that the request met all 7 of the criteria for approval. Additionally, as mentioned, the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which includes the future land use plan and the thoroughfare plan. Thus, staff recommends approval of the requested conditional use permit as presented. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Patrick. That brings us to applicant presentation. Is there applicant present? The podium, please. State your name and address for the record, please.
Mauricio Larios, 6819 Altadena Drive, Rosharon, Texas.
Okay, do you have a presentation, or are you just here for answering any of our questions?
Just questions, sir.
Okay, we'll call you back up then if we do some.
Thank you.
That moves us into persons wishing to speak for or against this item. Seeing no movements, asking a second time. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, that moves it to staff discussion. Commission discussion. Anyone got anything? All right. Let's call for the vote. All those in favor, sign by raising your right hand. All those against, same sign. Seeing none, passes by 5-0. All right, that moves us to discussion items. That takes us to City Council update.
Thank you, Chair. So at the July 22nd City Council meeting, we had kind of a unique setup. We had a 4 p.m. meeting and a 6:30 p.m. meeting. Of course, y'all were there for the 5 o'clock workshop, so I won't belabor y'all with an update on the workshop because y'all were there for it. At the 4 p.m. meeting, though, City Council did approve the Providence Village update to their allowed uses to allow Mathnasium to get in there. They also approved the first reading for Ordinode number 1 to be updated. Y'all had a positive recommendation under that, and they saw fit to approve with the conditions. At the 6:30 meeting, those conditions were already made and taken care of and accounted for through the second reading of Ordinode number 1. So they got in and out on the same night. There was also a reading of an annexation. So we'll have an annexation zoning assignment coming up for a piece of property off of Glenview. And then we've got 3 other items. You also had the first reading for 2641 Roy Road. If you recall, that was the OP to general commercial property. Y'all recommended approval of that. City Council also recommended approval. And then there were 2 CUPs. The first was for the auto wash. That was that auto wash next to Dairy Queen, midway on Broadway. Staff had some conditions with that request. Y'all approved it with the conditions. And then City Council approved it with conditions 4-3. And then the E&A Cigar Shop at 1021 Broadway, 10201, got approved with a 7-0 vote. With that, that wraps up City Council update.
Okay, that brings us to Commissioner's Activity Report. Anybody have anything to report? All right, P&Z elections will be next meeting. The P&Z next regular meeting will be August the 19th, 2024. And with that, I'll adjourn this meeting at 6:51.